Hi, it's great to be with everyone here for this World Communities Forum. I think this is the inaugural event, and I really want to thank Shafco and Kennedy O'Dede for helping bring us all together. I'm excited to meet all of you and get into this conversation about how leaders around the globe are responding in this moment as community organizers and leaders, and how this is impacting grassroots work and inspiring a whole new generation of folks. I'm going to do a quick intro of our panelists today, and then let each of them tell you more about themselves. So I'll start with Ensay Ufot, who's in Atlanta, coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia. Georgia is a state that anyone who's following the national news in the U.S. knows is a critical place for organizing and voter engagement. And she leads the New Georgia Project and the New Georgia Project Action Fund. So you'll be hearing from her. Then Eugene Young from Wilmington, Delaware, which is also an important state because I think President Biden is the first president ever to come from Delaware, but Eugene, you can tell us more about that. He leads a metropolitan urban league there in Wilmington. And then all the way from West Point, Liberia, we are excited to be joined by Nellie Cooper, who leads the West Point Women for Health and Development organization that's working to end gender-based violence and oppression. And so I thank you all for joining us today. Each of you have such distinct experiences, and I know our audience is going to be excited to learn from you. So what I thought I'd do is just kick it over to you, and we'll start with Eugene. Introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you do, and then I would love to just hear how you became a community leader and what is your passion? So Eugene, we'll start with you.
Sure. First of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly honored to be here on the panel with such amazing women, and also as you as a moderator is just incredible in itself. So thank you. Also, special thank you to Shafco and Kennedy for putting this together, and the team. So again, my name is Eugene Young. I am from Wilmington, Delaware, and yes, Joe Biden is the first president to come out of Delaware, so that's pretty exciting. Small state as we are, less than 1 million people. The joke is we have more chickens than people in our state, which is actually a fun fact about Delaware. But I head the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, and I'm the co-founder of a grassroots organization called Network Delaware. We focus around getting people involved, engaged on the aspect of policy, and issues that will impact them and their communities. The Urban League is a well-known civil rights organization throughout the state. There's 90 other affiliates throughout the country of the United States. And in that role at the Urban League, we focus on policy, research, advocacy around issues that matter most to Delawareans. For me, it is really, when I think about leadership, it always comes back to one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Cornel West, who says, "You can't lead without loving, you can't save without serving. So what's the depth of your love and what's the quality of your service," right? And so for me, it goes with this idea of first love, right? That love for me came from my family, my parents, Diane and Eugene Young Sr. And so that is a part that pushes me in order to work with people, help others, and just a wanting a better of community, right? And then the idea of service and that quality of service, that has been something that I've seen throughout my life in my family and also in my neighborhood as people served me and were mentors and poured into my cup. And I look at this moment in time right now as a time where we all must work, assist, and serve others as we move forward. And that's really my passion, is being of service to the community that's given me so much. And that's why I'm thankful here, and I'm thankful to talk with you all about how we're all working together and things that we're doing individually to be of service.
Awesome. Well, welcome. I love that idea of love and service. Okay, Ensay, we'll go south to Georgia. What's going on?
Hello, I'm thrilled to be here and say Ufad, I'm the CEO of New Georgia Project, and we are probably best known for doing large-scale civic engagement projects, civic engagement voter registration campaigns. We've registered over 500,000 Black and Brown people just in the state of Georgia alone, and in all 159 of Georgia's counties, and really trying to have this conversation in our state, but also nationally, that there aren't really red states and blue states, right? That there are places that where people's votes are suppressed. There are places where people are ignored, where people have been disenfranchised and disincentivized from participating in public life and public and in elections as a way to bring about the change that they want to see. And so we are community organizers. I jokingly say that we are basically a tech startup inside of a civil rights and voting rights organization. We build our own technology. We build our own video games, working to try to change the culture of politics and elections and who participates and who runs and who wins. And so just to peel back the layers and demystify it and to talk about, again, you talk about love and service, we talk about love and power. Right? Mm-hmm. Who has it? Who doesn't? How much we need in order to bring about the changes that we want to see. And that's why I do what I do. I'm passionate about sort of people power. I'm passionate about sort of family and wellness and community and the idea that there is more than enough, and that some people are just really, really greedy. And good at hoarding. I would also learn that today I learned that people from Delaware are called Delawareans, and I feel smarter and richer for that knowledge. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, and I think if there's ever been a time to really understand equity and inequity is certainly during this time of COVID, which we're going to get into a bit about how your organizing has changed. Oh, bummer. We just lost Nellie for a minute. I know as she's beaming in from Liberia, technology is an issue. So we'll give her a minute here, see if she can join us back. There she is.
There she is.
Great. Nellie, just in time. So welcome, Nellie. Tell us a little bit about you and what your passion is and how you got into community organizing.
I'm Nellie Cooper. I'm the director for West Point With Me for Health and Development Organization. An organization I've been working to help women and children who are abused during the war and now. It's an organization that is working to help the community of West Point to be able to have a voice in the country and in the area that we work, for government, for others to hear our word, to know about our work and to hear our voice and know whatever we are doing, that we are working for a community that is being marginalized, a community that have been there, people don't even care for, a community that people feel that is not a place that people could live. So we find ourselves working within this community. We are living in a community that is overpopulated, congested, and yet still people are not leaving from the community. All along, government has tried to move people from West Point to go into other communities, but West Point is just an area that is being congested. And I tell you, West Point is a place that is very close to the capital of Morovia. And there is a place that accommodates very poor people. So most of the people living in West Point, they have been very poor. Some came from the hinterland of Liberia. They came, and the first place they reside is to reside in Morovia. And because of that, coming to Morovia, you have to come into West Point. Most of them come into West Point, and then they find it very easy for them to have access to the capital. So this is something that has made West Point to be very overpopulated. And because of that, we work within this community because it is violent oriented. It's a community that have more violence. You have abuses, most especially on women and girls. And then you have child abuse. So we found ourselves within this community working. So we work against gender-based violence. We also work to empower women to be able to have a voice and to be able to participate in the decision-making process of the country, both locally and nationally. So this is where I found myself working. and we work within several thematic areas because the community have several needs. So we find ourselves working in several needs of the community. So right now, as I speak, we have a whole lot going on. During the COVID-19 period, we have a whole lot of things going on because we couldn't close our office. People were coming to us when COVID-19, when the government had the mandate for people to stay at home. People came to us because they felt that we are the ones that they can reach to, you know, first. So this is what I found myself doing.
Well, the women of your country are enormously strong, and so it's exciting to have you as part of this conversation. And I think you touched on one of the questions that really this global forum wanted to, sort of illuminate, which is how has the work that you do changed as a result of COVID? And I know as organizers, a lot of us are used to being, in the streets, in the communities, knocking on doors, being in person. And of course, in the last year, folks have had to change that. And also, as we know, COVID has exposed, for some people for the first time, the enormous inequities in society, and especially as we even think about turning the corner. So I'm curious, it's such a massive topic. Maybe each of you could talk about one thing that you've done in your work this year that you think has been a sort of surprise in terms of how you've shifted your community organizing work, and what you would want other folks around the world that are listening to you today to take from that, and also what you would like philanthropists who are investing in some of this work to know from your point of view. So maybe we'll just go back in the order that we started, if that's okay, just to make it simple.
Sure. So for us, I'll give my one thing. One of the things that we've kind of shifted because of COVID is we're still doing one-on-ones. A major part of organizing is those one-on-ones, right? And one of the things that we find is that we can still do those one-on-ones digitally, right? So we can still have instead of connecting with someone at a local library, local coffee shop, whatever the case may be, we can still connect with people digitally, and you can probably even meet with more people, right, digitally than you could before when you had to go to the actual geographic locations. But another thing that we've started doing, we just had a group of individuals knocking doors around housing issues over the weekend. We're going out now, knocking on doors, because a part of it is just, you got to meet people where they are, regardless of what's going on. And don't get me wrong, we still have the proper PPE and materials that are needed. But it's all about engaging with people, because one of the big issues that we have is that not too many people have access to broadband access and are able to jump on phones. We have a lot of mothers and grandmothers and fathers who are in the community that may not have the service that may be needed. And so we cannot expect for individuals to just to be able to work online. So we do a lot of going to where they are and hearing about what the issues are going on within our community. And more importantly, working with them within that group so that they're able to advocate for issues within their specific community. It's not paternalistic of us telling individuals what they need to work on, but it's more of us assisting them along in their process. As someone has an issue around clean drinking water, our job is to work with them and assist them along in that process and use what other methods, resources in order for them to do just that.
I'm glad you raised this, the issue of technology and a technology divide and how that's impacting work. I mean, not only based on income, but obviously generation. There's just, it's a new opportunity, but it's also a new challenge. I would love to know what you found in Atlanta, in Georgia. I know that so much organizing politically this year went off the doors, but obviously you had enormous successes there in frankly mobilizing historic numbers of folks to participate in the elections.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say one, nothing focuses the mind like the credible threat of death, unfortunately. And that is what people were faced with and are dealing with across the globe. I mean, I know that we often cite the numbers of the ones who are no longer with us in the US, but it's a global phenomenon. And a year ago, around this time, there was no idea what was happening, what was going on, how long we would be quarantining, et cetera. And so I knew that our commitment to the communities that we organize in was a permanent, that was a constant. And so at this moment, and this is also a message for philanthropy, is that we were experimental and entrepreneurial. Right. And that is often not two adjectives that are used to describe community work, community organizing, nonprofit work, work that regularly gets funded. But that's what we did. And one of the things that I'm super pumped about or excited about is, our commitment to the communities that we organize in remained the same. We had huge plans. We were going to go to every college campus, every dorm move in and move out day to register people to vote, every county fair. Like, we were going to judge your hog if we had to get you to register to vote. And none of that was available to us. But we said, well, where are our people in this moment? And we found that the 17 and a half, 18, 19-year-olds that we wanted to continue to engage with were on this platform called Twitch, which is like, YouTube for gamers, if you will. So we started an activation called Twitch the Vote. On National Voter Registration Day in the US, we ended up registering 9,000 young people to vote in one day. Sorry, that's my dog, my amen corner. And Twitch the Vote on Election Day, we had 500,000 unique viewers coming into our live stream. We had young people, first-time voters, telling their story, acting as correspondents, and people really sort of sharing in this moment. We had live performances. It was fantastic. But again, it was a way to continue to have high quality conversations with the people that we organize with. It was still a way to improve our messaging, to do focus groups, like do all of the things that we would have done if outside were open, as my staff likes to say, and try to shift in the virtual world. But, again, being experimental and entrepreneurial and just trying to figure out how to maintain authentic connections with the people that we communicate with. So our goals did not change, but the tactics that we used to get there did.
Those are a couple of, I'm really glad you raised and say the needing to be entrepreneurial, try new things, which again, and I think that is a good message for the philanthropic community, that this is the time to experiment and invest in new ideas, because the world is changing faster sometimes than the mechanisms for funding. And also maybe when we get into other just sort of suggestions and advice you have for the world, how we actually close this digital divide, is that really something that we should be focusing on? And Eugene, you probably have some thoughts there based on what you're doing in Delaware. Nellie, for you, obviously your work is very community-based, and it would be instructive for us to know, how has COVID and this pandemic changed, if there's a lesson out of this for you in the work that you're doing with women, which I know a lot of it is about advising them of their rights, empowering them to have agency. So what could you teach us?
Okay. Should I start now?
Go ahead.
Okay, for the Western women, we know that we have worked with several women even outside of West Point. So many of the women, many of our members and even non-members that come and go, they are people who have been affected during the COVID-19. Many of the people are petty sellers. They sell in the market. And I'm telling you that majority of them lost their businesses because when COVID-19 came, there are people who we call a for hand of mouth. It's like you have to sell before you eat. So they have to go in the market to go and sell. And when they go to the market, they were being beaten from off the market because the place was congested when COVID-19 first hit Liberia. So it was like something that was very, very much complicated for the women in Liberia, especially in West Point, because the biggest market is in West Point. Watertown market is right to West Point. So we were so much affected in a way that many of the women lost their businesses, they lost their livelihood, and they even lost, every other thing that they think they could have to be able to sustain themselves. So these women, what we did was to be able to look up to other donors, to donors who would see partners that would come in to come and help. So we reached out to many of those partners, organizations, and what they did was uh, Queen to Queen was able to give us something for the Swedish organization, women organization were able to give us some little, funding so we can be able to give a first hand relief to most of the women that were affected. So it was like a drop in the ocean because reaching out to 200 persons was like a drop in the ocean. So we also reached out to another organization, which other organization, but then the organization that we want to respond was Oxfam and Global Fund for Women. So Oxfam came in and what they did was they gave some relief by giving some full cash and cash for COVID-19, yes, those who were affected so that they can buy food and some essential items that they need. So what the women did was when they got the money, they were able to purchase some needed items that they needed like food, but then they used part of the money for them to be able to get back into business. So that
Right.
was something that was here. It was very interesting. And majority of the women, and in fact, almost all of them, they didn't have phone, phone for them to reach out.
Mhm.
So also I able to provide phone for them. And then Global Phone, we also asked Global Phone, can you help us? And Global Phone came in to help about 20 women to be able to also have, some relief to get back into business. So what we did was we trained those 20 women into business, and then also to train about 150 to 200 women, and we're able to have the women get back into business. But it's not just easy. Even though some other women are into business because their friends were able to help them. So what we
Right.
did was to make sure that those women now who have gotten into business and gotten their the business training, they are also helping other women who need to know how to be able to get back into business. So we told them each one teach one. Each one teach one. So like they like this person get this training and then how to be a retain their own business so that they can get out of business again. And I'm telling you, those kind of businesses, they are very little business. It's like a small table market that they have to do so that they can sustain their family. And most of them have a success story. Some of them are coming back to tell us, oh yes, what you did for us, we are back in the business and we have added some value to our businesses. So now we are doing this, we are getting some level of profit. So it's like a success story for the women that we have worked with. But
Right.
even that, we have several women who are still out of business and we are encouraging them to be able to, we are looking for means for them to access loans from other saving clubs or saving institutions so that they can get back into business.
That's a that is a story. So thank you. I think that the idea of partnerships and also how do you invest in folks who are closest to the economic, devastation that is happening, particularly for folks already, folks of low incomes, folks who are small business owners, and so maybe what we could do is to shift this. I'd like to actually ask each of you a specific question because one of the challenges for us as organizers is how do we, once we get out of this pandemic, assuming we do at some point, and as the vaccines become more available, we don't want to just go back to where things were because, as we all know, a lot of inequity existed before this. And so I would love to know, Eugene, and as you're thinking about what's happening in Delaware, I know the Urban League has been very focused on service, sort of what we think of this huge disparity for service workers who've been hugely impacted, who are already the lowest paid. We just saw in the United States a refusal to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. How do we learn from what take what we have seen, what has been exposed to some people for the first time, and how do we try to rebuild and think of our organizing with a sort of a bigger North Star? And how are you thinking about that in Delaware in your organizing?
So we're here in Delaware is interesting because you're 100% correct. This is only shine a light on some of the issues that have been going on within our communities for years now, right? We have so many Black businesses and Latino businesses that are gone and will never come back. We have already we're seeing like the mortality rates of Black and Latino is astronomical compared to their white counterparts. So one of the things that we've noticed in our state is a lot more people are wanting to become organizers because of this, right? And are wanting to get involved and engaged, because essentially organizing boils down to two things, right? It's about power, and it is also about resources, right? You're organizing, you're creating power within your community, and you're fighting for specific resources, may that be around the education system, criminal justice, whatever the case may be. One of the things that I think we're doing is, we already have within this combination of these two organizations, we have what we call like this ecosystem of community leadership, right? And so within this ecosystem, you have everything from we have a fellowship program that we call the Gilliam Fellows, where people come in and they learn. I love what was said earlier about mystification. Like, we're demystifying this aspect of those who have and those who have not. And I can't connect or talk to anyone about what's going on within my community, right? We're teaching people who to talk, who holds the levers of power within your state. How do you connect with them? How do you pressure them, right? We've also created the Ella Baker Black Organizers, where we specifically focus on training people to organize within communities. We also have issue campaigns that what I think is becoming the heartbeat of the work that we do, because our issue campaigns focus in on what is important to you in your specific community. So if I am in Southern Delaware, and there's certain areas in Southern Delaware that have had issues with drinking water, with quality drinking water, I can create an issue campaign, and we will come in. We're not going to come in paternalistically and tell you what to do or how to do it. We're going to help train you so that you're able to go and do what needs to be done. We'll help you troubleshoot. So we have 5 issue campaigns focused on everything from housing, which is a major issue right now, the instability for housing for many individuals, to we have an organization, issue campaign called Black Mothers in Power, that focuses specifically on Black maternal issues that are going on within our state. So these are the things that we are pretty much focusing in on and doubling down on, as we believe more people, as we see more people are coming in, want to get involved, engaged. Our goal is, how do we connect you through this ecosystem somewhere where you feel as though you can be trained up, and not training up by just some workshops, but true troubleshooting, mentorship, coaching, so that you're able to not only become a good organizer, but train others to do the same as well.
Yeah, it's so inspiring what you're doing, and this idea of building power at the community level. And I know much of your writing is about this, the importance of, we can't shy away from talking about how we change power structures. And I one of the things I have seen, and I'm curious as we're finishing our conversation today, is just one of the benefits, of course, of moving to a more digital way of communication is lifting voices of folks who have not been heard, and challenging that whole ecosphere. And I think you're doing that in Wilmington in such an important way. And this whole idea of building power and is, of course, so germane to what you're doing in Georgia. For folks who don't follow what's happening in the United States, Georgia has now become the state everyone wants to replicate in their own state in terms of voter empowerment and engagement. It has also led to, as we know, and certainly even just in the last few days, enormous pushback from the entrenched power structure in Georgia. So how are you dealing with, as we think about post-COVID, how do you deal with your success? Because of course, any success brings the reaction, and it's very much on display in your state.
Yeah, I mean, we are in, listen, what they say, don't read your own press. And I mean, that's certainly how we've been conducting ourselves, but also it's just not hard to not get caught up, because there was an immediate and swift and severe backlash to this sort of multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-generational, progressive majority that we have built in the Deep South. There's something fundamental, it feels, about it that is scaring the defenders of the status quo. That, again, it's not just Black voters, that it's a multiracial effort, and that we are organizers and have an eye towards building power and building infrastructure to be able to win and then defend those wins beyond one election cycle. That it's really easy to marginalize or neutralize or take out an individual leader. And I know that, we are prone or primed to want to have an individual superhero, like who is it that saved Georgia? Who is it that saved democracy? But the truth of the matter is that there is an ecosystem, you will continue to hear that word, that is built of movement organizations, repro organizations, economic justice organizations, all throwing down together to build the power that we seek. And so, one, it's not one of us, so that's how we deal with it, that we share this credit is awesome. I think two is that we delivered Georgia its first Black United States Senator, its first Jewish United States Senator. And we had 90 minutes to celebrate before people were breaking into the US Capitol to try to stop the Electoral College vote. And so the world moved on quickly to start focusing on the Capitol insurrection. And then there are these forced demands and calls for unity. And so it's not pretty hard. And then immediately after that, 80 bills dropped in Georgia that are designed to make it more difficult for people to vote in this moment. And so, this is one step forward and like 10 steps back, but we're stronger and smarter and faster and more strategic, and there are more of us. And so we're going to be able to navigate it. But yeah, there was a severe backlash to the progress that's being made. And I don't think that is unique to us in Georgia. I imagine that all of us have stories about doing good work and how, and then the enemies of progress responding awfully as a result of it.
Right. I mean, it's exhilarating, and it's also, you are on the front lines. And again, for those who have been trying to follow what's happening in the United States, it was a perfect example of how grassroots organizing really pushes the agenda nationally. Recently the House of Representatives passed a massive bill on voting and voting enfranchisement to counteract this. And so all of that is really based on the work that's been happening at the local level. And I love that you shout out your sisters and brother organizations, because you're right. None of this, the beauty of community organizing when it's done well, is that we bring others along and we learn from each other, which is what I hope I know this short time we have together is just a little microcosm of how we can all learn to use what we've, take the lessons from the successes and the real challenges, honestly, as grassroots organizers. Nellie, maybe I'd be interested in your thoughts based on what also you've heard from your co-panelists here, because I know building women's power for your organization is really important, and some of it's at the individual level. And but how this moment when women are kind of on the move and beginning to feel their power. What's a lesson that you can give us from your experience in Liberia, organizing women as a powerful force?
Yeah, for looking at women being organized as a powerful force in Liberia is something that is very, very much, I can say, interesting, and it's very much something that we are happy about, because with all what's going on in Liberia, women still have the powerful voice to speak. When women speak, people listen because of what we did during the war. When men were being hidden under the bed, they were hiding from the French men, and then you found out that the women were the ones that were winning the bread for the entire family. So now women have raising up and said, "Look, enough is enough. We cannot accept this kind of thing going on. We are not going to accept this kind of thing. We are not going to accept this." So it's like men are not listening to women, but it's also very much difficult when it comes to the men taking up the space. And right now, many men have taken up the space for the women in Liberia. So it's similar, little bit difficult for women to be able to reach to that space where we had before. So what we are doing is we are organizing. We have women organizing. We form networks, and we work with the existing networks and other organizations, collaborating organizations, to be able to speak as a national voice. But at the community level, as West Point has a climate change problem where you will find out that the Atlantic Ocean is eating up West Point. And at the same time, we do have safe drinking water in West Point. But all of those issues, there are issues that we as Western Women for Health and Development Organization helping people to understand that even though we have this problem, but we can still move on, we can make it. What you have to do is to make sure that you have safe drinking water by buying your own safe drinking water while we're advocating with government to provide safe drinking water within the community. And just recently, we had people coming from the Water and Sewer Corporation telling us that they need what they can do for us, even though we have been advocating. But what they can do is to be able to make the well that we have, all of the wells in West Point, safe. But how can you make a well that is salty? You have a salty water safe. So we are saying that we still need well born drinking water in our community. And apart from that, we are telling women, buy your water, make it safe, and then you can chlorinate the water and make your water safe. We have water gas. So people at least can afford to buy water gas. So many people will go and buy the pipe-borne water from other communities that are closer and be able to make sure that they keep it safe so that they and the family can be okay. And because of that, we have this issue of outbreak of cholera. It is no more because of the education that we are giving to women to be able to keep their water safe.
That's a perfect example, and I think, and say even as you said, like when people are facing just survival, it is very hard to begin to focus on other things like voting and building political power and all this. So all of this work, it's all critical to making our communities safe and bringing people together to solve what are just, again, have been, to Eugene's point, massive problems forever, but finally there is a bit of a light shine on them. Okay, I'm getting the cue that we only have a few minutes left, and so I'm gonna this is like kind of rapid fire. I know that part of the idea for all of this fabulous World Community Forum was like, if we were at Davos, what would we be saying? And I love that kind of construct. Or if you were speaking to the massive philanthropic community that is concerned about what's happening. So I would just say, for each of you, you get a minute to say, what would be your number one demand that you would want the global development agenda or development community to address, you know, and it could be what you feel like you need or what you've learned that the community needs, because you all are making the change we need to see in this world. And so I think we'll just go backwards. So Nellie, I'll start with you. 1 minute of what you want to be on the global agenda, development agenda, when all the big people get together and talk about the world.
Well, one of the main thing is that women education, women and girls education is very much essential. It's important because when women learn, the entire nation learns. So for it to be on the agenda is one of the things that we want the global community to be able to think about. And because when women are educated, they will know their right. They will know how to be able to speak about their right. Because many of the women in Liberia, they are female literate and some of them are not literate at all. So it's something that we really want women to be literate, to know how to speak about their right. And thanks to Disney Hooter, they have brought some level of relief to some of the women because we have our literacy classes and women are attending. So that is something that is very, very much important to us. And we really love that. And some of the thing is, violence against women is very, very much bad. It's something that we want it to be eliminated. People say it can be stopped, but if the global community put their hands together and try to help women, to be able to speak out more and more, you will find out that violence will decrease. And then women will have more voice. And I'm sure if there are many men out there who don't want to hear about this because they feel that men should always be in control of everything when it comes to the family and to women issues. So they want to tell you that we will see about that, and then they are not saying anything, they are not doing anything about it. So
Right.
we want people to understand that women need to be violence free. We don't want no violence in our homes. We want people to understand the law should be able to back up because in Liberia, the law is very slow when it comes to fighting violent cases. Sometimes when you go, you get so tired because the justice system is so slow. So you have putting up your energy. You have putting in your energy. You have done some other work to work around it so that you can have justice, and then you look at justice cannot be in the far fetched. So it's like something that you get tired of. So we want the world community to be able to say something to Liberia, to our government, and tell them, look, you need to fast track cases that involve violence in Liberia. So when those things happen, you will find out that women issues will be, trashed out, especially when it comes to violence against women.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So invest in women and girls and their education, and it leads to so much more. Okay. And say, what's your best shot here?
Okay. Here's my big idea. I think that there should be sort of a global framework that is adopted by nations, nation states, multiple large corporations around reparations, and what it looks like to address grievous harm that has been visited upon populations throughout the history of the world. So if we're talking about chattel slavery, if we're talking about the Holocaust, if we're talking about gender-based violence in times of war and outside times of war, that when the peace comes and it has been settled, we need to figure out how to right those wrongs, how to address that harm. I come from an organizing tradition that says that you cannot fix what you have not faced, right? And so thinking about, is it South Africa style Truth and Reconciliation Commissions or whatever, but how do we address grievous harm that has been visited upon populations, and how do we try to make folks whole?
Okay, that's awesome. As our friend Brian Stevenson said, you can't have a truth and reconciliation process if you actually haven't addressed the truth. And so thank you for laying out your truth. Okay, Eugene, I think you get the last word here.
It's hard to come after these two amazing women. I would double down on what Nellie said. I mean, Sinu said around reparations. Reparations, I think, is critical and important right now. We're seeing the effects of the lack of wealth in many of our communities here in the United States. The median wealth of many of our Black families it's abysmal right now. The light is shining on it and showing that there's a need right now. The second I would say is, well, if you have reparations, we would need a lot of these other things, but long-term investment, long-term partnerships within organizations. Within our ecosystem here in Delaware, we've been, as I said, we've created organizing groups, we've created fellowship programs. We have candidates school training. We've been able to, it's not a happenstance that over the last 5 to 6 years, Delaware, a small state of Delaware, has elected more Blacks into their state legislature than any other state in the country. And that's almost twice fold between us and what's number two. It's because we have a candidate school, a campaign manager school, where we're working with many men and women who've been on the sidelines and who've been sidelined, right? In order to help and explore opportunities of getting involved and getting power. And so these are some of the things that we're doing, and that we look forward to, like working with other entities in order to continue this amazing work that we're doing as we try to help communities, and more importantly, allow people from opportunities for people from the community to speak for themselves. You know, Ella Baker, I'll close with this. Ella Baker once said, strong people don't need strong leaders. And I think that if we're able to hone in on that and allow more individuals to shine and be able to talk about what's going on within our communities, I think we'll be in a lot better space.
Beautiful. So yeah, leadership development, investing in community leaders who are changing the world, and investing in folks who are going into office, and to the example that was given in Georgia, to places where representation is changing, and it's changing because of work on the grassroots level. The three of you are amazing. I feel so honored to have gotten to spend this just little bit of time. We have to do this again next year, check back in, see how it went. So Nellie, Ensei, Eugene, thank you for your work, for being part of this global community, and good luck in changing the world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to share space with you all.
It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.